afternoon. Welcome to You and Your Pets on SOMAtv. We've been doing a series on emergency and other critical care medicines, and we have many specialists that we've had on. Tonight we have on Dr. Laura Eirmann,
Got it.
who's a nutritional specialist with Oradell Hospital in Paramus, and she's going to talk to us today about veterinary medicine and nutrition,
Pet nutrition.
and how we can interact in that way as a general practitioner with a specialist. Dr. Eirmann, where did you go to vet school, first of all?
I went to Cornell. I'm actually from New Jersey, so I went to Rutgers for animal science first, and then I went up to Cornell for my veterinary degree.
And that veterinary degree gave you a basis to move on, and then your specialty work was in nutrition.
Right, I specialized in nutrition after doing general practice for a number of years, and I trained at Oradell, and I also trained at the University of Pennsylvania and Tufts Veterinary School.
And so tell me about your residency. What kind of activities did you do? What kind of things did you see?
Well, I trained as a clinical nutritionist, meaning I worked in the veterinary hospitals with both well patients, so puppies and kittens that needed proper nutrition to grow well, and I also worked with ill patients, some very ill patients that were in our critical care unit that maybe needed some help to get eating again or maybe needed specialized diets. So pretty much the gamut from the healthy to the ill. And that's what nutrition's all about because we all eat.
Right. And we can't stop eating, so we have
Right.
to learn how to eat properly. So basically there are different branches of nutrition. You happen to do carnivores and meat eaters.
I do.
Dogs and cats. But what about the other branches of nutrition? Can you just mention them for us?
Sure. Veterinarians who specialize in nutrition can specialize in small animal, predominantly dog and cat like I do, large animal, which would be farm animals, cattle, horses, etc., or comparative. They may do a little bit of everything, including exotics. There are certainly veterinarians that specialize in zoo nutrition.
Excellent, excellent. So you have a well-rounded background both as a veterinarian and as a nutritionist. So let me get into asking you some questions that I know my clients tend to ask me as a general practitioner. And one of the things that I always get asked about is food. What's the best food for my dog, or what's the best food for my cat? Should I get canned, or sometimes it's called wet, or should I get dry or bagged food? And I tend to tell them I don't think there's a lot of difference, but you have an opinion on that, and your opinion is much more valuable.
Well, I start with saying to individuals there are a lot of excellent choices. Just like there are a lot of different cars that you could purchase. So there are a lot of very good options. And for your pet, as a nutritionist, I want to make sure first and foremost your pet's eating the right amount. So we'll talk about that a little bit. From my perspective, it's not only what to feed, but it's how much to feed, because we know that leaner pets live longer. Now, in terms of choices, you can provide, in nutrition we like to provide what's called complete and balanced nutrition, meaning if that animal eats the meal in the right amount, they get all of the 30 plus nutrients that the dog and cat requires in that meal. So the preference of canned versus dry is a bit of an owner preference. As a general rule of thumb, dry food tends to be easier, a little bit less expensive. There are certain disease conditions where we would like the pet to eat canned diets. For example, some dogs or cats develop urinary tract issues, stones, etc. Those pets do best on canned food because it's about 70 to 75% water. If you or I had a kidney stone, our doctor would say, drink lots and lots of water.
Right.
So I can't ask your cat to drink 5 glasses of water a day, but I can feed him canned food to increase water intake. So a lot of it is personal preference, but also what's best for the pet.
And so you feel that we're doing a good job as pet owners in general when you see these people? See people in the general public, do you think we're doing a good job as pet owners? Or not such a great job as pet owners with the food that we have available and the education that's out there?
I think really people are doing a good job in selecting complete and balanced diets. That's the first thing that I suggest that owners look for. That bag or that can of food will say on it, it has to stay on it if it's a complete and balanced diet, and whether it is meant to be fed to puppies or kittens or adult dogs, or perhaps you may have a dog that's a breeding mom that needs a special nutrition. So that's your first thing, is to look for that statement. Now, what we're not as good at, unfortunately, is how much we feed. Unfortunately, we know that based on a very recent survey, more than half of our pets are overweight. So good job at feeding diets and selecting them. maybe not so good with the amounts. And it's not the diet. Sometimes it's all the extra stuff we give because we love our pets. Right. And, it's an important part of our relationship with our pets. That's why I love nutrition, because it's one of the many ways we can show love to our pets. But so is exercise.
Yeah, well, I hate to admit it, but my little dog, Freckles, who's actually been on the show, is a little bit with a lot overweight. As is her dad. I tend to find that overweight people tend to have overweight dogs, and that's the case.
Mm-hmm. Well, we love them, and it's a way to love them. It's hard to look in those brown eyes and say, no, you've had enough.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let me ask you about another question that I often get. I have a lot of people that come in and they seem vehement about using the raw diet or the newest fad, Blue Buffalo, or the newest fad diet out there. And they swear that it's the best thing on this God's green earth. Do you find that there's a big difference between our common over-the-counter foods that we can get?
Some companies have been in the business for well over 50 or 70 years, and they make excellent products, and they've stood the test of time. So just like in human nutrition, fads come and go. I mean, there's so many weight loss fads. There are a lot of fads in pet nutrition, and some of them are just to be different, to stand out on the shelf. I don't contain this. I have this in it. I go back to the basics. Is it complete and balanced? Is that diet formulated to meet that pet's needs? Now, everybody's different, just like humans. There are humans who need a gluten-free diet. There are humans that can't eat or consume certain dairy products. Very rarely we have pets that do well on certain types of diets, and especially with certain disease conditions. And for that individual pet, that may be the right choice. And that's where I really encourage pet owners to speak with their veterinarian. Is it possible if I feed my pet this way, he will do better? Many of us as veterinarians do have some concern about raw diets from a public health perspective, because we know for ourselves cooking meat, the package will instruct us to cook to a certain temperature, because we're potentially concerned. So I say to folks, I'm not in your kitchen. I'm not the nutrition police. I'll share my opinion with you, and I'll give you a lot of research so that you can make an educated decision for your own pet. But I want people to start with the basics. We all need to have protein, carbohydrate, fat in our diet. Cats are interesting. They're obligate carnivores. They actually don't require carbohydrate. But some carbohydrates provide fiber, and they will help some pets lose weight if they're overweight, and they'll help some pets that don't have the best poop get a nice form stool. So there's a role for all of these nutrients in a pet's diet. So I say to folks, lots of great choices. Please work with your veterinarian to match the diet to your individual pet.
And I think that's excellent advice that the people watching should really take up. Talk to your veterinarian, look at the label, and make your decisions based on what you feel is right for your dog or cat in consultation with your veterinarian.
Yeah, you're all part of a team.
Right.
The pet owner, you know your pet better than anybody else. You feed your pet every day. Your veterinarian has the background in science and physiology. They know a lot about nutrition. Some of us love to talk about it and could talk about it for hours, but your veterinarian knows what they're doing. So ask their advice. Don't be afraid to ask them, is my pet too thin? Is my pet too fat? Am I feeding the right diet? What do you think about this food that is marketed X, Y, and Z? Is it marketing, or is there science behind it?
And I think we've been very lucky here. I've had the opportunity to work with you on a number of cases. One of them, a very nice lady and a very great dog. That we kept alive together for a long time after maybe we would have lost him. But I know you don't do this in a vacuum. You have a team.
Absolutely.
So tell me I know you also work in industry, so that's a separate team. But your clinical team, people I refer to you, get a consult with you just as they would with a cardiologist or a nutritionist, a neurologist. So tell me about your team, and how does that team work together? Because it must be well-oiled.
I hope so. We try. Number one, most important part of the team is the pet, obviously, and the pet owner. The pet owner, we spend a lot of time in nutrition talking about what's important to the owner. As I mentioned earlier, you can find good quality, affordable pet food. So I want clients to say to me, hey, I want to spend enough for my pet to provide good nutrition, but hey, if I don't have to spend an outrageous amount, I prefer to do that. I want to know where you want to purchase your food. If it's most convenient to get a good quality food in the grocery store, we're going to do that. If you want a lot of selection and a lot of option, there are great pet stores that you can utilize. So the owner's an integral part of the team. Very integral, the primary family doctor. In the case that we shared, you were that dog's doctor, and you knew that dog inside and out for years and years, and literally because you had done multiple surgeries. Yeah. I didn't have that. I needed your expertise for that. Part of my team at Oradell includes a wonderful nutrition technician who works with me, and then our specialists. So if I'm doing a physical exam on a dog and I notice a murmur, I can go talk to our cardiologist, and he or she can tell me if I have to think about the sodium level in the diet or all the things that people with heart disease think about. Right. So it's a big integral team, and we do work very well, and we communicate. And part of nutrition is coming up with a plan and following through. If your pet needs to lose weight, is he losing weight? If your pet needs to eat a special diet because he has kidney disease, is he eating the food in sufficient quantity? Right. So there's a lot of follow-up. As you know, we were on the phone a lot.
Right. And so now we've extended ourselves, and we have a short time here left, but we've extended ourselves to diets that are nutritional aids in the treatment of diseases such as kidneys or cystic calculi, which are bladder stones, or diabetes or cardiac disease. In just a short couple of sentences, how would you use those?
Sure. So, as I mentioned earlier, pets require 30 plus nutrients. Clinical nutrition for disease conditions is really all about increasing or decreasing the amount of those nutrients, tweaking the proportions. For example, dogs get a condition called pancreatitis. For those dogs, we lower the amount of fat in the diet. For cats with kidney disease, we lower the amount of phosphorus. So there's certain nutrients that we adjust in these special diets that we recommend. Right.
And so those are the things that we use. And I think that's a great segue into our next segment that we'll be discussing actual diseases.
Good.
And I think we're just about out of time for this portion of the program. So this is You and Your Pets with Dr. Laura Eirmann and myself, Ernest Rogers, from Maplewood Animal Hospital. Thank you.
Television is a powerful and influential medium that allows different groups the opportunity to produce programming that directly affects their own communities. Public, educational, and government access channels ensure that all people, regardless of race, age, gender, disability, religion, or economic status, have access to local government information and the use of a public communication forum. Make sure everyone has a voice. Support your local PEG channels.
Welcome back. I'm Dr. Ernest Rogers from Maplewood Animal Hospital, and today we're talking about nutritional items and issues for dogs and cats with Dr. Laura Eirmann from Oradell Hospital in Paramus. And I'm glad you're here. Thank you again.
Thank you.
This is the second half. And I think now we're going to be talking about some of our more interesting clinical cases and maybe a couple of clinical issues that we will deal with at the end.
Very good.
But initially, I think we have to talk about what makes a pet a healthy pet or an unhealthy pet. And though in humans we talk an awful lot about weight, when we talk about animals, we actually look at their conformation or their body form rather than their weight. And so we talk about the Marilyn Monroe versus on the Marky Mark type body versus the body like mine, which is a little bit more rounded. So with dogs, can we discuss, or with cats, I guess we're going to start off with the cat case. So if we could start off initially with the cat chart.
Yes, we put a chart up here. Every time you see your veterinarian, your vet will weigh your pet, and it's worth asking your vet, well, tell me, what did he or she weigh the last time I was in? We like to look for trends. But as you mentioned, Dr. Rogers, just like humans, dogs and cats have different frame. I mean, some animals are bigger boned, if you'd like to call it that. So it's a little bit difficult sometimes for a nutritionist to say, oh, this 12-pound cat is underweight or overweight. So we do something called a body condition score, and that's what we have up on the slide. One of the standard systems that is utilized by veterinarians is a 9-point system, where 5 in the middle is an ideal weight. So you can do this with your own pet. This is a hands-on approach because they are fluffy, some of them, and you want to feel them. You should be able to feel your dog or cat's ribs. You shouldn't have to push in there. It shouldn't feel like this part of your hand.
Right.
What it really should feel like is kind of going across your fingers, kind of like slats on a fence. You
Right,
should be able to
right.
feel ribs. Shouldn't be bony. That's
Right.
under a 5. That's emaciated. We'll talk about that. But your kitty or your dog, you should be able to feel the ribs. If you run your hands past the rib cage, there should be a nice waist, a nice hourglass
Right.
shape, just like Marilyn Monroe, I guess.
Yes.
And if you look at the side of them, if you look at the pictures that we have here of the 5, the ideal kitty, there should be a little abdominal tuck. There shouldn't be a lot hanging there.
That means
So
it should go up
it should
between
go
the legs
up
and have a
between the
definite
legs.
slope.
Right, right. Should have a little bit of a belly, not a big paunch there hanging down.
Right,
So
right.
that's what we're looking for. And if you have trouble doing this, ask your vet to help you.
Right. And at my hospital, I happen to have a number of tear-off
Great.
of these, so we can actually give them to the owner, put down the animal's weight, and have them follow up with the dog and cat.
Yeah, and share it with everybody in the house because we all know that sometimes there's somebody back home who's sneaking treats.
And that's one of the things that we didn't bring up in the last segment that we can bring up now is that many people think love is giving their animal treats. And though that might be true, you have to cut back on the food. You can't, the number of calories in has to be less than the number of calories out, otherwise your dog's going to put on weight.
Yeah. So the interesting thing about treats, there's some tricks with treats. So dogs they really want your attention. And most dogs and most kitties would be just as happy if you gave them one little piece of their kibble
Right.
or a little smattering of their dry food. So, for example, say you feed your dog a cup of food at breakfast and dinner. Maybe you put 3/4 of a cup out at mealtime and you save that extra quarter cup every time he's a good boy and he comes
Right,
in and
right.
does his business like he's supposed to.
Right. And that's interesting. Our first case is a cat, and I don't think we need the chart to decide whether or not Malcolm is
This
a
is
little bit
Malcolm.
overweight. Malcolm is, if you'd like to give us the history on him.
Malcolm is a sweetheart. He actually came in to Oradell, starting out at 22.5 pounds. As you can see in this picture, and we have another picture of him. Again, we don't really need the score chart to know he's overweight. And for kitties, you go, well, okay, they don't have to fit into swimsuits. Why do I care? We know that overweight cats are 4 times more likely to develop diabetes mellitus. So the same problem in people with diabetes, kitties get that as well. That's a lot more weight for dogs and cats to bear on their joints, so they're more likely to get arthritis.
Right.
Asthmatic kitties have more problem if they're overweight. So there are a lot of health issues. We also know there's a beautiful study in dogs showing that dogs that stayed lean their entire life lived almost 2 years longer than the counterparts that were heavy. So for lots of reasons, we wanted to put Malcolm on a diet, and that's exactly what we did. And it's no different than human nutrition. We tried to figure out how many calories he was eating before, and then we cut him back. And here he is on his way to a healthy weight. At this point, he's lost about 6 pounds. And sometimes you go, oh, gee, what's 6 pounds? But when you start at 22, that's 25% of his body weight. And that's real. If we scale that up to a person who's 220 pounds, he's now down to about 150. That's significant. And you're starting to see that waist that we love.
Right.
So there he is.
And I think the other thing that I might mention is that I don't know if this is something you've noticed, but male cats that are heavier, I tend to see more urinary problems with
Absolutely.
them. More crystals, and they tend to need modification of the urinary system when they get these crystals.
Yes.
It tends just to be worse.
Yeah, urinary issues, constipation, kitties that are prone to constipation. Some of these poor guys can't even groom and clean themselves because they just can't
Right.
reach back.
They
So
look
yes.
like turtles when you're...
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's look at the 9-point chart now for dogs.
Similar for dogs. Again, in dogs, we like them to be lean. We actually like them, absolutely same concept. Feel the ribs, see a waist. If you especially have a dog that's prone to certain orthopedic issues, hip issues or something called hip dysplasia, very common in retrievers, German shepherds, etc., we really like these dogs thin. I say to my clients, I want your dog skinny. When my dog was younger, people used to say, isn't your dog underweight? He was actually 4. In my book, for a golden retriever who we want lean for health issues and offset arthritis, we want him thin.
Right.
So same concept. Put your hands on your pet and ask your vet.
Do you find that fat pets tend to be more embodied with cancer than thin pets, as we see in humans?
There are certain forms of cancer in pets that are associated with obesity. Interestingly, many pets, if they're being treated for cancer, don't tend to necessarily lose weight. So the concept of, oh, he has cancer, I got to feed him a lot now so he can get through treatment, doesn't really hold. We want them to stay lean. It's an excellent question.
So then I think our next slide is Leo, and again, you really
Yes.
don't need a body conditioning chart to help Leo here.
So Leo is a Labrador Retriever who initially weighed 117 pounds. The biggest thing that I see as pets lose weight, especially dogs, owners will say to me, wow, I just thought he was getting older and slowing down. They tend to walk better. Sometimes if they're just a little stiff getting up, they can just move easier. They're not carrying all that extra weight. So he did start at a body condition score of 9. He has the most wonderful family who not just diet, like people diet and exercise.
Right.
This is a couple years later. He actually lost over 30 pounds. So none of this happens overnight. We're not about crash dieting any more than we are people. In fact, we don't want cats to lose weight too quickly. Dogs usually wouldn't allow that to happen. They'll start begging and asking for food. But it's about feeding them lower calorie foods. It's about watching the treats, selecting lower calorie treats. For example, green beans, string beans work well for some dogs. Carrots,
Apples.
melon. Remember, never grapes, never raisins.
Never
There are
raisins,
certain
correct.
foods that dogs absolutely cannot have, but most vegetables are safe. When in doubt, you ask your vet.
Right. And it's interesting. So we looked at 2 cases here. One, a cat that lost weight through nutritional aids and nutritional treatment, and a dog that's lost weight through nutritional aids and nutritional treatment. But it's very different for the 2 species. You can cut back a little bit more on dogs, as I understand, than you
Yes.
can on cats.
Yes.
So just a quick comment about the difference between losing weight in dogs and cats.
So cats can develop, if they lose weight too quickly, essentially that fat that they're losing, the easiest way to explain is it almost overwhelms the liver, and they can get a condition that's called fatty liver disease, or veterinarians refer to as hepatic lipidosis, and it can be very serious. So when you work with your veterinarian on a weight loss plan, you want to make sure the pet isn't losing too quickly. For a kitty like Malcolm, who started at 22 pounds, I wouldn't want him losing much quicker than 1 pound to 1.5 pounds a month. Now, that's all calculated based on starting body weight. So what holds true for a 22-pound cat won't hold true necessarily for a 15-pound or a 30-pound. But your vet will give you guidelines on, and the most important, your friend, part of my team, is the inanimate object, the scale. So we start a plan, we weigh the kitty in 2 to 4 weeks, and we adjust. And we just fine-tune until they're losing it at an appropriate rate.
Right. And I'll just make 2 comments now.
Yeah.
One, Malcolm is not the biggest cat I've seen. I've seen one that was 31, and I have a friend who saw one that was 41 pounds. So they do get out there, and they were both chunky. I mean, there's no question. And then I guess the second comment is, at least at Maplewood Animal Hospital, and I think most veterinarians will do this, we allow our animals to come in and be weighed at no charge
Oh, that's
on
excellent.
a regular basis whenever they want to. And it's difficult on the owners, but it gives them that option.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And so we like to have that happen, and it's really good.
Yeah.
And then I like to recommend swimming as an exercise.
It's an excellent exercise. Low impact, so walking, swimming, just like in people. Not a lot of, these guys this big, we don't want them pounding on those joints.
Right.
And we're treating disease, I'd much rather prevent it. So if you just newly adopted puppy or kitten, talk to your vet about how much to feed right off the bat to prevent this from happening. It's just like people, it's so much easier to prevent than to cure. Yeah.
Correct. Okay, this next case is one that actually I was involved with, and many people might recognize this dog as Patrick. Patrick was a dog found in Newark in a garbage dump, and it might look here like as if he's dead. He's very emaciated. He's a 1 at least, and he's very emaciated.
He's very both depleted in fat stores, and I can see that he's lost a lot of muscle. So this poor guy has lost both fat and muscle, and we have to get him back on the road.
Now this isn't a case that you treated, but one of my friends, in fact, Dr. Scavelli, had treated this dog, and we just want to point out that what he's laying on is a heating pad, which is actually an IV bottle that has been maintained at a heat, and he has a tube going in his neck called total parenteral nutrition. And so the good news is that this is our buddy today, and he's doing well. You can see he's in great shape, probably
great.
a 4 or a 5.
Looks beautiful.
And Harry might actually be a 6, but he wears his clothes well. So
That can hide a lot.
Patrick is doing really well.
He looks great.
Now, just as we move on,
Uh-huh.
our clients and our people who are watching us really want to know more about where they can get information about nutrition. I can certainly refer them to you at Oradell, but are there other sources of information?
There are great resources, and a new resource just launched in March, and it was launched by the World Small Animal Veterinary Association, and we have the website for you. 2 very common questions I get is, well, how do I select a pet food? And they're on this website. You can download a nice little guideline that helps you when you go to the grocery store or the pet store, what to look for on that label, and also what to ask a pet food company should you call them up and want a little bit more information. The other thing I get asked a lot is, well, there's so much information on the internet. How do I sort fact from fiction? And there's an excellent resource on the same website that helps you assess that information. So I'd highly recommend this as a site to start learning a bit more about feeding your pet.
Well, Dr. Eirmann, thank you very much for all your nutritional counseling and nutritional information. I'm afraid we're about out of time right now, but it's been a great time having you here, and hopefully we'll get you back.
Thank you.
I understand that we have our problems with our pets and we like to address them. Please talk to your veterinarian about what's going on with your pet. This is Dr. Ernest Rogers, Dr. Laura Eirmann, for you and your pet. Thank you.